Hey everyone, I'm Steve. Welcome to Maximum Guitar Works. I'm not normally an unboxing video kind of guy, but I'm going to make an exception in this case. I have got a saw in here, a mini saw that is proclaimed by everything I've ever read about it to be absolutely the most accurate small saw, period, anywhere. In fact, all the claims I ever read is that it is dead on accurate right out of the box. So, hence I am going to unbox this on video. I'm going to set it up. I'll read the instructions. I'll give it, fair chance of everything that I need to do. I'm going to set it up and I'm going to make a cut and see if right out of the box it says dead accurate is what everybody claims. So, fair? So let's get into it. It's called a Byrnes Saw. Jim Byrnes is the creator of this. Jim is a modeling guy and evidently couldn't find tools accurate enough to do his modeling, so he started making his own, which have become very successful. And so even though it's a modeling tool, a lot of luthiers use this saw because of how accurate it is and for very specific tasks that require delicate cuts. So I think this will be a great addition to the shop. Let's see what we got here. Nice heavy-duty box, like it. Appears to be extremely well packed. A lot of styrofoam. Inside the top lid, we have a new accessory that Jim created, I think last year, 2017, and this is a sliding crosscut saw for his Byrnes saw. This is pretty cool. All right, we'll set that aside. Looks like we've got some tools there, a couple extra little pieces. Lots of styrofoam. We got the second layer. Side here, looks like we have another tool of sorts. Definitely have to get in the directions to see this. We've got a taper gauge for on the table saw making angled cuts. Very nice. This is actually going to come in handy for what I intend to use it for. Alright, we've got a receipt stapled to my receipt. We've got some additional Allen wrenches, some assortment of extra nuts, and or screws, machine screws. Looks like there. More styrofoam. We've got some extra saw blades that I ordered. Okay, here we come. On the packing side of the house, I will give Jim an A++. This thing was packed so well, it would be hard to be damaged in shipment, which is obviously nice. And here is, oh my goodness, this is beefy. Here is the saw. This thing is very solid, very heavy, rubber feet on the bottom, doesn't shift or move, stays put. This is a beautiful piece of art here. Look at that. As any good consumer would, I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to read through the instructions here, and I'm going to get it set up, and we're going to come back and you will see my very first test cut with this right out of the box. See how she does. So I spent a few minutes just kind of separating the parts, looking through the instructions, reading the instructions, and I really haven't done anything with it yet other than just place it here. The only thing I did do is I took a little paste wax and kind of coated the surface. It seemed to kind of help it slide a little bit better. So that's kind of nice. But that's about it. All right, so let's kind of give you the features as I see it and as I understand based upon reading the instructions so far. First off, the motor is a 1/3 horsepower, 2.5 amp motor. Plenty to do whatever we need. The capacity for cutting is just under 1 inch, 15/16 of an inch. Now if we look at the table, we've got two different things going on here. We've got the miter gauge, and the miter gauge slides in the track very nicely. It's got all those presets, as you see, for different angles you can do. It basically has a pin that just comes out and gets placed in whatever angle that you need. Right now it's in the 90. Now that pin doesn't lock into place, so when you pick up that miter gauge, just be careful that it doesn't fall out onto the floor. It does have a fence system, but what we're seeing is two fence systems right here. We see the standard one, which is only about, what, a 1/4 inch or so of the bottom, and then an extension to make it higher is the top part right there that's connected. So that's an accessory. Another accessory we have on here is a micro adjust. This micro adjust basically can slide up to the fence. Let's see if I can get that so you can see it, and then can adjust from there. You back it off from that 0 point on that line. Each 1/0 is actually 0.1 millimeters. So you're actually talking a tenth of a millimeter. So that's the adjustability that you have in the micro scale, which is pretty incredible. The fence is self-aligning. Once you loosen up both ends, there's a knurled knob on either side. You can then slide it left and right. And once you get it, there it goes, hitting that micro stop. You always tighten the rear one, or the front one I should say, the front one first, which self-aligns, and then you tighten the rear one to just secure it into place. On the front, we have this knob right here, which is actually height adjustment on the blade. So you can see I turn it left, the blade comes up. On-off switch, as we mentioned before, and then this is just a lock. Once you have the blade set to the right height, you turn, see if I can get this angle here, you turn this wrench just enough to secure a bolt, and then to adjust it, you basically take a little bit off and that becomes loose, and now it's adjustable, the blade height. And we do have a dust collection port there, although none of my Festool hose sizes seem to fit it perfectly, so I'll have to figure out what kind of adapter I need for that. Let's look at some of the accessories. Some of the other accessories I mentioned before coming out of the box, but this is a taper guide for doing tapered cuts against the fence. Now what I've realized is the extension that we talked about has got to come off, and then this rides just above the regular fence, and as a guide at any angle it looks like all the way up to 30 degrees. We'll see how accurate that is. We'll do a test cut on that. The sliding table, very nice. Came right out of the box ready to go, with one exception. I had to put on this little apparatus, which is just a stop to prevent the table from going all the way off. Now, interesting thing, I thought this piece was just kind of a handle, which I thought was odd that there would be a handle. Normally on these type of sliding tables you grab a hold of the table that way. But actually what that is a safety device, which is really cool. So the blade comes through, the table can slide past the blade, but it doesn't come past this little handle area, which is basically just a safety guard. So that's kind of cool. And then that little apparatus, like I mentioned, prevents it from sliding too far to the rear of the table. It's got a micro fence in here that can go from, I think it was -2 degrees all the way up to, gosh, I think it was 48 degrees. Alright, so that's a nice feature that can come off if you don't need that. If you're just doing straight boards, then you won't need that. I also ordered a couple optional blades. It comes standard with a blade that is 0.055 thick, so 55 thousandths thick, and this is a 24 tooth carbide blade, 24 tooth. So for little extras, this would be more ripping, and then this guy would be more cross-cutting. 4-inch blades. This is a 36 tooth, the same 55 thousandths thick right there. So that's an extra blade that I ordered. And then I ordered a 3-inch blade that is 28 thousandths thick right here. And with that I ordered kind of a 0 insert, so I could put this insert in and cut up through it and have a 0 clearance, you know, insert for this additional blade. I'm not sure if I really am going to need to do that for what I'm intending for this purpose, but I got it all the same. So we'll do a blade swap in a little bit and show you how that goes. Safety guard on this guy seems pretty usable. You could easily take it off if you wanted to, just one bolt on the side, but it seems to kind of just adjust height vertically, clear that, and pass the wood right through. So fit and finish, pretty amazing actually, how tight the tolerances are on absolutely everything. Now we'll see the cutting and see how that goes. We'll take this piece of bird's eye maple, little scrap piece. It's got one straight edge, and we'll use the miter gauge at the 90-degree setting, and we'll make a cut, and we'll see how it goes. Now I'll adjust that blade height to just clear, and then I'll take that wrench and tighten that down so that it doesn't move on us, and that should help us. Alright, I've got it powered up now, and let's just see what it sounds like. Okay, everything seems to be running good. That motor has a spring action to it with a belt, probably keeping constant tension on that, so that's nice. Like I said, my dust collector hose didn't fit perfectly, but I'll just take the closest one that kind of slides inside loosely and see if there's any effectiveness to the dust collection. The cut was very smooth, very smooth. That's even the ripping blade that we've got in there, not the crosscut blade, but a very smooth cut. And that was the very first cut with this machine directly out of the box. So let's see how this looks here. Like everybody says, I mean, this looks This looks dead on. I can't see any light through that little square. So that's pretty impressive right there. Let's pull the miter gauge out and let's set up our fence and do a rip. This in fact was the blade that was designed for it to begin with. So let's see, let's go right about to the edge there. We'll tighten down the front, then the rear. Now we're going to do some experiments here. I am going to set that micro stop up against the fence block at the 0. We're going to do a cut, then we're going to move it, let's say 0.1 millimeters, and we'll make another cut and we'll see how that turns out. A little bit of dust sneaking out, but I'm sure a lot of it is going in the dust collector even without the right sized dust collection hose. So let's see what we have here. Let's look for parallel. I didn't really set this to anything special. I just kind of set it to cut off that taper, and it looks like I've got 44.58 on that side, 44.58 on that side. That's pretty amazing. That's perfect. Perfectly parallel to that blade. That's impressive. So 44.58. So if I were to move this over, let's say 0.58. There's 0.5 millimeters and then another 0.08. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right there. Okay, we'll see how that does. So this should be moving 0.58 of an inch. Obviously, like most table saws, dust collection is not as effective when you're just trimming the very little bit off. So if that micro stop was adjusted correctly, I should be exactly 44 millimeters. 44.01. 44.01. You can't see that. 0.01. This is incredible. I just took off 0.57 millimeters. I was shooting for 0.58, but that could be just my eyeball not lining that up on that little dial indicator correctly. That's if you're within 0.01 millimeters of exactly where you want to be, I think no matter what you're building, you're going to be fine. So that's pretty impressive there. All right, there's 4 screws that hold this extension on top of the main fence structure. So you got to keep your Allen wrenches pretty handy. I figure most of what I'm going to do on this, I'm going to set up one time and maybe leave it there for the most part. Alright, so here's the extension. So that comes off, and we're left with the standard fence system right there. This is the mode of which we would use this taper gauge. So let's see what we can do with this taper gauge. Let's put on there a 5-degree taper. We've got the fence locked down. We've got this set to 5 degrees. And let's go ahead and do a cut now. right, let's get out our digital angle gauge. 5.1. So for not having index markers any more than a degree apart, I'd say that's pretty accurate right there. So that's very nice. Now what we're going to do is check out this guy here. Perfect fit. Now the rails under here are designed for the left one to be set to absolutely true precision, and then the right one you can adjust to make it sure it fits that slot, but this fit right in directly out of the box. And again, it'll go all the way up to that point. The blade is under the handle and will not hit the blade as long as you have that catch on there, and it won't fall off either. So pretty simple but effective. There we go. Now we're not going to need this guy, so the angle cuts on that are pretty cool, but we'll remove this since we don't need it. There's a lot of pieces and parts here, so little tape on that screw prevent me from losing that one. But I will also mention, if you order one of these bad boys, what was recommended on what I was reading on some online forums of people who had this is a little $8 bag of extra screws and pins and things like that. So these are all the things that you need within this, just in case you lose one. Probably not a bad idea to extra $8 to have that. Alright, so there's our crosscut. So same way we did other things before, we could certainly take this guy and do the same type of cut. Now I do also have on here a stop system. That stop can adjust all the way out to about 9 1/4 inches if you have it set on the furthest position. So we could come all the way out here and move that stop all the way to the end and get about 9 1/4 inches of a direct stop. But I don't need the stop for what I'm going to be demonstrating, so I will also move that piece aside. Dead perfect. I'm not used to this in tools. Normally tools take like a lot of time to set up and square up and everything like that. This sliding table system is dead perfect. I mean, a total absence of daylight under that square. That's phenomenal. So that's awesome. So to remove the blade, the directions say, number 1, unplug the power. I've done that. It says to take a 3/8 inch wrench and attach it to the belt end of the shaft. And then a 11/16 inch wrench. Yeah, there we go. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. The other good thing I should point out about the design of this guy, this is the perfect time to point it out, is the bottom has full access. So really, once I get that nut loose, it'll probably be easier just to turn it upside down and remove the blade. Looks like we've got a shim on the outside. There's probably one on the inside. Yep, there's one on the inside. We are going to get crazy and put on this 28 thousandths inch blade right here. Put the shim on top. Okay, that's finger tight, at least as far as it'll go on. Seems pretty simple. It looks like those shims actually act as blade stiffeners, so no additional stiffeners would be needed for any of these thinner blades. So the sliding table, as I mentioned before, it had got an angle device from -2 to 48 degrees, which I took off because I don't need it for 90-degree cuts. This is pre-programmed at the factory to be right out of the box a dead perfect 90 degrees, and sure enough it is. In the test cut it proved that. But I had Jim Byrnes do one little modification for me on this, and let's see if you can see it. We'll try to zoom in a little bit, but right here you see a pin. Okay, that pin is removable. When you insert that in, it becomes a guide. Now I had him place this a half an inch to the left of the center line of the blade, and I had him place it on center about 10 millimeters up. That gave me a clearance from the bottom of the pin to the table of a little over 5/16 of an inch. Now, you guitar makers out there, you kind of getting the feel for where I'm going with this? I hope so, because 28 thousandths blade with a pin with a 5/16 clearance gives me exactly what I need to do my fret slots. I've got a template on here, and that template mounts to a fretboard blank, which the ones I use are generally 5/16, but that would be the thickest that I ever use when I go to slot. The thinnest I would ever use is a 1/4 inch. So this pin placement is perfect, where no matter what fretboard I want to use, I have got the clearance of the pin, plus I've got room for that pin to seat firmly inside my notches in my template. All right, so that is the perfect. Now, full disclosure, Jim and I discussed this, and I determined, since my notches were 5/32, that a 5/32 pin in there, and that's a stainless steel pin, would be the perfect size. That way it would be snug without any play whatsoever. The problem I ran into was it was too snug, and since that pin slips in there, it was providing a little friction. Perfect fit, but when I pull my template out, it was pulling the pin out with it. So I took a break and I in the first part of this video, and I went and basically made myself new templates with increasing the size ever so slightly, just over 5/32 for my notch. So depending upon what the notch size you have, you probably want to request from Jim that he put a 1/16 inch pin in there. So that's just full disclosure. No problem for me. I was able to laser cut my main templates, and not an issue, and now it's a perfect fit. Now there always is going to be a little bit of play side to side, and that's what you need to get it easily in and out. And obviously everybody understands the concept if you've cut your own fret slots before, but basically from the starting point to the ending point, you push one direction. It doesn't matter which direction, but you push, and I generally push left. So when I start this first cut right here, I'll be pushing left, and every single one other than that will be, every single one addition to that will be pushing left, and therefore the center lines will not be affected. All right, so that's what I got that for. Now let's do a little test cut of this. I'm going to set my blade height to approximately 3.5 millimeters. Right about there, I'm going to lock the blade down with that lever on the side, and then get my dust collection, and we'll be ready to go. There we go. I did a couple test cuts on this board without the template on it, so that's why you see 3 lines there. But the first line is the nut line, which then will be cut off. And then I've got perfectly 22 fret slots on there. So a couple things I noticed in review of this bad boy is the precision is amazing. It's quiet, it's smooth. It worked great. It's certainly incredibly easy to do, a lot better than doing anything with a hand jig, and it's better than taking a separate saw system and trying to configure that on a big saw with a sled that may or may not be a little clunky. So this is a great system for my intended purpose, and I plan on using it a lot, maybe even experiment with spacing other than standard for my scale length. Since I can make my own template, I can do whatever I want. So maybe mess around with a 25 1/4 or 25 1/8 scale length and see what I think. But it really lends to creativity being able to do this yourself, and this appears to be a great tool for it. Price-wise, at the time of filming, the base unit of this saw sells for $450, and the accessories, the micro adjusting, the extension on the fence, the sliding table, the extra blades, the taper gauge, all of those are accessories for it. And so I probably spent about $800 with all the accessories I purchased, and including shipping for a hefty unit like this is not cheap either. So for me, it looks like it'll be a good investment for the long period of time, but you got to calculate how many fretboards you're going to be doing. I had somebody tell me, it costs like $9 for LMI to pre-slot your fretboard. So how many fretboards is it going to take to make it break-even point? You have to decide that. I like the flexibility. I like the fact that I can do it right here in my shop and not have to wait for shipment of an order. I just have some fretboards on hand, then I can whip out whatever scale I want, and it's instant gratification. So decide it for yourself, but I think for the quality and the workmanship in this tool, I think it's an incredible value, really do. So check it out for yourself. Talk to Jim Byrnes if you have any other questions. If you want to do fretboards, I highly recommend, instead of doing it yourself, just let Jim know you want the maximum pin guide for fret slotting, but probably reduce it to a 1/16, I think would be your best bet, and you're good to go. So anyway, that's all I got for you today. If you got questions that I didn't cover, or any other details that you think I left out, I was going through this. This is the very first time I've opened this and used it, so I was kind of learning as we go a little bit too, but pretty straightforward. But any questions I didn't cover, feel free to post those in the comments below, and definitely subscribe. I appreciate you watching, and like everything else, remember, no matter what you do, start with excellence.